Today we're going to be talking about solving systems by graphing. So when we're talking about systems, we're talking about a system of linear equations, and that's going to be two or more equations. So everything we've seen so far has only been one equation that we're graphing. So we're going to have two or more equations, and this year in Algebra 1 we're focused on two equations. So an example of that would be y equals 2x minus 1 and 2x plus 3y equals 7. As long as it's two equations or more, with two or more variables, then you've got a system of equations. So those general steps that we're going to be using to solve these are going to be to get both equations into slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. We're going to graph both equations, and then we're going to state the solution. We're going to see what that looks like, what that means as we go through and look at a couple of examples. So here's our first system. We have y equals 2x plus 3. And y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So I'm going to use two different colors for these. So our first one there, we have y equals 2x plus 3. Our m is always going to be the number that's in front of x. So that's 2. And we count rise over run, so we're going to make that b over 1. And then our b value is a positive 3. So we're going to go ahead and use that information to graph. So we begin with b. That means we're going to start up here at 3. And then we're going to count our slope. Rise over run. So up 2 and over 1. You could also go down 2 and left 1. You can make as many points as you want, but you should have at least 3 there. Because there's an equals sign with these, we are going to be connecting the dots with a solid line. Okay, so all of our things are going to be solid lines here, going all the way through the graph, arrows on the end, because they do keep going on forever and ever in both directions. We're going to do the same thing with our second equation. So we have y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. So here our m is going to be negative 1/2, and our b is positive 3. So again, we're beginning with b. Plot that point there. And then we go down 1 over 2, or we can go up 1 and left 2. Again, we're going to take these, and connect them with a solid line. Okay, and looking at these two things, where do you think our solution is going to be? If we have a system and we've got two graphs here, our solution is going to be where those two cross with each other. Okay, so here the brown line, the first one, and the orangish red line, the second one, they both had this same point in common. So that's going to be our solution. So our solution is going to be, let's write it over here. Our solution is going to be, the coordinates of that point are 0, 3. So that's the solution. What does that mean for us here? That means that if we actually check that point in both equations, or however many equations there are in the system, that it should be a true statement for both of them. So let's check. Okay, let's check here. So remember, this is x, 0 is x, and y is 3. So when we plug in those numbers, checking it in the first equation, 2 times 0 is 0 plus 3 is 3. So that is a true statement. So it does work in the first equation. And plugging it into the second equation, so we would have the same point plugged in. Negative 1/2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. So that again is a true statement. So we know that since it's true for both equations, that that is the solution to the system. Okay. Alright, next system we have y equals 2x minus 3 and y equals x minus 1. So since they're already both into y equals mx plus b form, our job is just to graph them. First equation, our m is 2 over 1, and this time our b is a negative 3. We begin with the b, so we're down here at negative 3, and our slope is rise 2, run 1 to the right. Okay. Now, on this first line, I am going to actually suggest that you make as many points as possible as you can. Okay? Used to be 3 points, now I'm changing it here because we want to be able to see where these two lines cross each other. So I want to have as accurate of a graph as possible in order to figure that out. Okay. The second equation, okay, y equals x minus 1. The m, the number in front of that x, is 1. So we're going to put that over 1 as well. And our b is a negative 1. So we're going to begin with b, begin with that negative 1. And then we're going to follow our slope. Let's make that be a little bit clearer. Okay, so we're going to go up 1, right 1. I am getting closer to this. For the second equation, when you go to graph that, you need to have enough points to make your line, but you also need to figure out that point that they have in common and where they're going to cross. So we'll put down our ruler here and connect our dots. And they crossed right here at this point. They both had this point right here in common. The coordinates of that point are 2, 1. So remember, for a point, you're going to go x first and then y. So that would be the point 2, 1. And you could check that stuff. You wouldn't have to write it down, but you could just fill it in. So 2 times 2, which is what we got for x, is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1, which we got for y, so it works there. And then 2 minus 1 is 1. So it works in both of those. That is the solution to the system. Now, what happens if those equations aren't already ready to go for us? We have to do a little bit of work for them. So if we have 3x plus 4y equals 12 and 2x plus 4y equals 8, that's our system. Okay, we're going to have to do a little bit of work here first before we can figure out what m and b are and how to graph this. So remember, when we solved these before, you have 2 steps. The first step is to move the x's. Since those x's were positive, we're going to subtract them. We're also wanting to get it into y equals mx plus b form, so I'm going to put the x's first and then the positive 12 afterwards. Second step in getting y by itself is to divide each of those pieces by 4. So that means we would have y equals, we don't know what negative 3/4 is. It's not going to simplify as a fraction. And then 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now that we have this equation, we can write what m equals. So that's going to be our negative 3/4. And our b is a positive 3. Now we're ready to plot this. Okay, begin with b. Slope is next. So down 3, right 4. Down 3, right 4 again. I'm going to make as many points as possible on this first one. Okay. And then we're going to connect these with a solid line. And then we're going to go on to the next equation. Okay. Those same steps are going to happen again. And you only have to do these steps if y isn't by itself. So if you have one that's by itself, you don't have to do anything to it. You're able to just plot or find the m and the b and plot them. So now we're going to have to subtract 2 x's from both sides. So that means 4y equals negative 2x plus 8. And then we're going to divide by 4 to each piece, and we're going to simplify as much as possible. So negative 2/4 would simplify to be negative 1/2. Keep the x with it. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So now that we have this, we can find our m and our b. You can't find these things until you have it in the proper form. So here our m is negative 1/2, and our b is a positive 2. We're going to begin with b, and then I'm going to follow my slope. So down 1, right 2, that's not a point on mine, so I'm going to keep going, and I'm going in the correct direction. I'm getting closer to the first line that I drew. If I go up 1 and left 2, that's getting me further away from that original line, so I don't want to go that way. I'm going to keep going down 1, right 2, and then I get them to actually cross at a point. Okay, you could make more than that after you find where they cross, or not. It's up to you. So now we have these, we're going to connect them. Okay, and they are crossing at a nice easy point. That nice easy point where they're crossing, that right there, is the point 4, 0. Checking them works the exact same way as before. Plugging in the numbers, seeing if it works, okay? So this would be 3 times 4, which is 12. 4 times 0 is 0, so that would give us 12. And 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 0 is 0. That would also give us 8 when you add those two things together. So solving systems by graphing is one method of solving these. We'll learn about the other methods later on this week.